Welcome to our series of interviews with candidates for the Governor of Utah. I'm Mike Mendenhall, President of the Utah League of Cities and Towns. We've prepared our questions based on a survey of our League Board of Directors. These mayors and council members have prioritized issues important to the residents in the areas they represent. We would like to welcome into the Utah League of Cities and Towns, Governor Huntsman. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, Mike.
Governor.
Great to be with you.
Yes.
What a treat. Thanks for all you do.
Oh, thank you. We appreciate you taking some time today. We have a few questions that come from the Board of Directors of the Utah League of Cities and Towns. Before we get to those questions, if perhaps somebody's been living under a rock for the last few years in the state of Utah, tell us a little bit about yourself and maybe what.
Well, I'm a dad, 7 kids, married to the greatest person I've ever met. We came here in the mid-'70s, our family did. No Huntsman Corp, no Huntsman Center, no Huntsman Cancer Institute. So to say that we have had a great ride and participated in a system that is unique in all the world, the free market system here in America, would be the understatement of the year. It's been a great ride, not without challenges and failure and upset and all of that, but whether private sector or the opportunities to serve our great country as a diplomat overseas in 2 of the most difficult and challenging and strategically important places that have direct relevance, whether you like to admit that or not, to our existence here, has just been a great labor of love for our family.
One of the questions that, as we asked our board of what they would like us to ask a candidate for governor, revolved a lot around growth. Speak to our leaders in the League of Cities and Towns a little bit about Governor Huntsman's plan to help communities with affordable housing while still maintaining that quality of life that our residents enjoy, and then also the challenges that come from growth with air quality and transportation in our communities.
Well, you have no quality of life if you can't afford housing and if you can't breathe the air and if you're stuck in traffic. All those things will drive people away. And we have to remember that it's a constant competitive battle, our state against 49 other states, because people have a choice. If they don't like the quality of life here, they'll vote with their feet and they'll move somewhere else. The reason that we're doing well in part is we're attracting 2 things that make success economically possible. One is we're attracting brain power. We're keeping our young people. So when I ran before, the biggest critique was our number 1 export was our kids. We'd love them and raise them, educate them, and then they'd go to some other marketplace. We'd lose that. We're keeping them, we're attracting others, and we're attracting investment. So if you can keep brain power and bring in capital to support the innovation of that brain power, you're going to do great. But then you get to the whole quality of life thing. And that's, if you can't afford housing, that's a problem. So as governor, I'll do what I did before. I'll strike up collaborative relationships with local governments. The last thing local governments want is a mandate to be forced to have dictates that determine what they do. That's where we occupy different lanes, whether in local government or whether in state government. And that needs to be respected. That's important. So one of the reasons, in part, that I picked up Michelle Kaufusi, the mayor of Provo, who I think is one of the most dynamic human beings I've met in a long time, a great leader, is I think it's good for a governor who has not been a mayor to have a partnership with somebody at the lieutenant governor level who can help teach and instruct and guide policies at the state level to make sure that they don't disrupt the work that local elected officials are empowered to do. So collaboration is key, listening carefully to what local officials have to say about what their needs are, and then finding collaborative solutions. Housing is a difficult one because I'm always scratching my head saying, what is the appropriate role of government, state government, for affordable housing? Well, we have the Olene Walker Loan Fund, which has probably just under $150 million. And it's going to support over its life, or has probably 20,000 units. So what are we making available now in terms of financing? What are developers doing? What land is actually available? So if you stop and argue that our state education office, through SITLA and other means, owns a lot of land in the metropolitan region of the greater Wasatch Front. And in collaboration with the state office, we could pick up some lands. We could build affordable housing where the proceeds could very well go to benefit education as well. So what I'm saying, I'm describing to you some innovative, maybe creative ways to look at where and how we can put up affordable housing. What we do know today is that we're woefully under inventoried. We have maybe a 45 to 50,000 unit need right now. And I think that's probably only going to grow worse over time. So this is an important, it's a critical need, particularly for those who are just getting into the workforce, those who are just starting a family. And I think just a final point here is we can do a better job aligning jobs with where the population centers are. So why is it that we have 100,000 people who flee Davis and Weber counties every day to work in Salt Lake County? Why can't we take the jobs to where housing is more affordable? Not everybody has to live in the most expensive region of the state. Let's take jobs to where housing is more affordable. That'll lift the local economy in ways that it always does. And then you'll have to look for your next housing opportunities from there. That's just the way the free market system works.
249 members of the League of Cities and Towns across the state of Utah. Some of those are, believe it or not, are not on the Wasatch Front, right? But off in different great and diverse places across the state of Utah. Tell us a little bit about your plan to speak to those members of the League, those that again are off the Wasatch Front, but are longing for economic development in their communities as well, and all those opportunities.
Well, I like to listen a lot. I like to use my ears in the ratio in which they're given vis-a-vis your mouth. We ought to be listening a whole lot more than talking. And as governor, I grew to really love and appreciate our 29 counties. But every county is different, and every county has its own aspirations and goals, and all have their strengths and their weaknesses. And a governor has to do some really good listening about what each county is interested in. So I think this is so important. I've included it in my top 3 priorities if we're lucky enough to be elected. So I want to focus on growth. We've covered that already. Mental health is another big priority for me because our kids are killing themselves, and we're not doing enough about it. And it's not an easy fix. It's a big, complicated, sensitive topic, but we need to do better. The third area really is, how is it then that we get more economic opportunities out to some of our counties who are not doing so well? We've got 29 great counties. They're all beautiful and unique in their own way. And some of them are not performing well. And I think many would like to do better. They'd like more opportunities. I've heard from farmers and ranchers that they love that lifestyle, but they also have to supplement their income with other jobs. And their kids will have to do the same thing. And you're looking at 6, 7 generations of this kind of work. And it's beautiful when families can work together and do that. But we need the kind of jobs and economic vitality that will help to support that. When I started GoEd, the Governor's Office of Economic Development, which I actually stole from the Singaporeans, because I was on their economic development board back in the 90s, and they're the most competitive nation in the world. And I thought, there's some things you can learn from other people who bring in brain power and bring in investment and expand their educational aspects, both primary and higher ed, and do it in a way that's just light years ahead of everybody else. And the Singaporeans always did that. So I stole GoEd, the concept, from them. That's kind of their organizing body, in a sense, nationally. And the trick for us when I was governor last time was, how do we bring in anybody? We just kind of wanted to bring in any jobs that would come here because we were really desperate to bring in employment and economic vitality, and to kind of prove that we were open for business. Things have changed remarkably. We've got a whole lot of businesses that have moved in, and a whole lot of homegrown entrepreneurs, which is the greatest of all outcomes. And a lot of them you see, close to your neighborhood, right in Utah County. And so I think for us, it's going to be focused less on bringing people in from the outside through the old incentive system and focus more on businesses expanding within the state. And why do you need to expand in Lehigh? Why do you need to expand to the point of the mountain? Why Draper? Why can't we find other corners of the state that have what you're looking for? They have a workforce, they have great training centers, they've got transportation links, good quality of life for people who might want to move in. And let's see about taking these opportunities for expansion to different corners of the state. And as we do, let's recognize the state for what it will look like in 25 to 50 years, not just what it looks like today. And I think in those conditions, you're going to see regional economic territories, natural economic territories created. An example of that would be, Washington and Iron counties coming together. The corridor between Cedar City and St. George, which is about the same as between Salt Lake and Provo, will be a corridor. It'll be completely taken in 50 years. And so why don't we think today about the kind of development that we want? What kind of businesses, what kind of industries would be naturally advantaged by being next to some great universities and technology training centers and a population center that's going to add 500,000 or another million people by midpoint in this century. So Emory and Carbon is another example of counties that should be looking regionally. And I think through that, they're going to derive more power. Weber-Davis counties looking more regionally at economic development opportunities, maybe focused more on the national security and aerospace side with the natural ties to Hill Air Force Base and Falcon Hill, which we stood up as part of our economic development program. So the state is going to evolve differently. There are no doubt going to be some very important rural economic opportunities that come out of our growth patterns for the next little while. We just need to be mindful of, A, what the state is going to look like, where the workforce is going to reside, where the training opportunities are going to be, and focus a little bit more on domestic outgrowth as opposed to just adding another wing onto your headquarters. Let's look at doing it somewhere else and giving other people an opportunity.
As governor, you've dealt with tax policy in the state of Utah. Tell our members of the league about what a Huntsman administration would have plans to make sure a tax policy is sustainable in the state of Utah, but also respects the local role of elected officials in their communities.
If you do tax policy right, it will make your state more competitive. It will bring in more capital. It will bring in entrepreneurs and businesses because they will see that you're at the front end of how you tax your citizens as opposed to mid-range or behind. There are states that are falling behind in the United States because they have not engaged in tax reform. They're worst practices states, and capital is leaving, and brain power will leave too. So I see this as a fundamental feature of livability, affordability, and competitiveness. So if you want to be a truly competitive state, you have to have a competitive tax code. So part of what we did last round when I was governor, there were a couple of things we needed to achieve. So what are you trying to do with tax reform? You don't just do it just to do tax reform. It's way too complicated. We needed to broaden the base, and we needed a more competitive tax code that would speak to the marketplace and shout, we're open for business. And for me, that was delivering a flat tax. So we did the first flat tax the country had ever seen. People had preached it and they talked about it and everybody had hoped that they could get a flat tax done. We actually did the first one. But we brought the public into it because it was fairly controversial, the idea that we were doing a flat tax. I mean, a lot of critics out there. But once we did the flat tax, we just took it under 5% flat, double weighting the business tax. We took the sales tax off food almost totally. And we did a few other things that really spoke to broadening the base, which was a principle that we were seeking out to achieve, and to make our state more competitive. Well, what happened after we got the final vote on tax reform, which was, by the way, 100% in the legislature? It wasn't divisive. It wasn't Republicans or Democrats. We had 100% voting in favor of it. It's almost unheard of to think that that would be the case. And it's because we took the time, we baked it, we brought the critics in, they all tried to fine-tune it in their own way. In short, they took ownership. They felt that they were all part of it, and that was a good thing to do. But after we got that done, That's when the magazines and the pundits out there started saying Utah's on the move. Utah's open for business. They've got a competitive tax code, and investment started coming in. Business started giving us a really serious look, and we started going up, the best places to do business list pretty quickly, because that was a signal to the marketplace that we care enough about our competitiveness to drastically reform our taxes. And on top of all of that, we delivered a $400 million tax cut, which I think still stands as the largest tax cut in the history of the state. You got to work collaboratively, you got to figure it out, and you got to find solutions. That's what people hope they'll have in a governor. But as for me, this was the highest honor, to be able to carry the hopes and the aspirations with the people of Utah everywhere I went and everything we did. I'm not much of a politician. I don't like politics. I don't like politicians for the most part. I'm a public servant, and I like people who can roll up their sleeves and get stuff done and talk common sense. And that's what I care about, and that's how I ran the place before, and that's, if lucky enough to get elected, what we do again.
Well, thank you for taking the time to speak to our membership, and we appreciate your service and
Great honor.
Your willingness to go at it again. So thanks again, Governor. Appreciate it. Thanks for watching our Questions for the Candidates series, brought to you by the Utah League of Cities and Towns. And as you weigh your decisions this election year, remember that the government closest to the people governs best.